In Baldur's Gate 3, what happens when you take your two favorite classes and you put them together for a build regardless of their class synergy, and does that even work? And I was thinking to myself, I like Ranger and I like Paladin, and I think, yeah, I can make that work. Welcome back to the channel, y'all. Today, we're going to be making a class build on the Ranger and the Paladin and smashing them together, sort of creating like this sanctified hunter knight sort of build. If this is your first time with the channel, we like to make viable builds in Baldur's Gate 3. We're kind of like a build craft channel altogether, but if that sounds like your cup of tea, then consider hitting that like and subscribe button, and let's get started. Starting off in character creator, we are going to start off with Paladin as our class because I want this to be a frontline build. So using a martial weapon like a sword, hammer, etc. Subclass wise, we're going with Oath of Vengeance. This is my favorite Paladin subclass, and it's just excellent all around. We get Inquisitor's Might, which is going to scale with our charisma, but you'll see that we're actually not going to invest very much into charisma. For our tenets there, just be careful about killing innocent people and letting evil things live. Background, always up to you. I'm just going to pick soldier. For our ability spread here, we are going to put 16 into strength, and I know you can manipulate strength in this game very easily with using something like the elixir of Cloud Giant strength or just the Hill Giant strength. So if you're already going to do that, you don't need to worry about strength, but I don't really like to fiddle with that all the time as far as making sure I have a bunch of elixirs. So for this build here, 16 strength, 14 dexterity. Dexterity is always useful, and then having our constitution at 16 is really good as well. We are going to have some concentrations that we're going to want to be able to maintain. Now for the remaining points, I just kind of made sure my wisdom and my charisma weren't having any negative modifiers, so I would go with something like this as far as your ability points, and let's go ahead and get to the leveling section. Now at level 2 for Paladin, we pick up Divine Smite, one of the best spells in the game, especially for a melee character, which is what we're building into. For our fighting style, go with Great Weapon Fighting. Defense is usually always a good one, but we'll pick this up a little bit later. So I would go with Great Weapon Fighting here. We are going to be favoring two-handed weapons. For your prepared spells, doesn't really matter. Command is probably the best choice for Paladin here, but really for our spell slots, we are just going to be focusing on Divine Smite. So let's go ahead and move on to level 3. Now at level 3, we do have a couple noteworthy things as far as our subclass actions here. We get Vow of Enmity, and this is bugged in Baldur's Gate 3 where we can cast this on ourselves, and this is going to give us advantage on all of our swings for 10 turns. Other than that, Hunter's Mark, this is actually a great concentration for us and probably what we're going to be sticking towards most of the game, at least in Act 1 here. So that's level 3 out of the way. Let's go ahead and move on to level 4. Now at level 4, we do pick up our first feat, and we're going to keep it very simple. We're going to go with Great Weapon Master, and then later on we're going to get 2 feats with this build. We're going to go with Ability Improvement and just bump up our strength. But remember, if you're going to use Cloud Giant strength or anything like that, then I would probably put this into maybe Constitution instead, or I would go with something like Savage Attacker. Those would be kind of the 3 that I'd be bouncing between. So Ability Improvement, Great Weapon Master, I would pick this one up first, and then again, if you're in charge of your own strength and you know how to manipulate that, then Savage Attacker would be the next bet there. So that's the feats out of the way. Let's go ahead and move on to level 5. And at level 5, we pick up Extra Attack. I would not do any multi-classing prior to like level 8, so I would be sticking the whole way, at least 1 through 5, until you reach Paladin here. Gonna get this Extra Attack. That is a huge spike in power. We also get some very useful spells like Misty Step. It's going to be great for our mobility because as a melee character, well, mobility is probably our biggest pain in the ass. Misty Step makes it a little bit better. We're not going to worry too much about Hold Person because we're very limited on our spell slots. So really we want to be saving it for Divine Smites and Misty Step. And then Command on the rare occasion, usually like the Grimforge fight, that's when I love to use Command. If you've never used Command on that boss fight, oof, use it. It makes it an absolute cakewalk. That's level 5 out of the way. If you feel like I'm going a little too fast right now, don't worry. At level 8, we're going to slow things down. We'll have a gameplay section to kind of show the bread and butter of this build, and then we'll continue on and we'll have another gameplay section. So right now, we're just flying by the levels. At level 6, this is when we start our multi-class, and yep, we're going with Ranger. For your favored enemy, really you can choose any one of these. It really doesn't matter. Sanctified Stalker kind of goes with what we're talking about, but I actually think Ranger Knight, as far as just the namesake, fits really well with the build as far as the fantasy that we're going for. But obviously Ranger Knight, it just gives you proficiency with history, and then it lets you wear heavy armor. Or a Paladin, we can already wear heavy armor, so that doesn't really make any sense. I would actually just probably go with Bounty Hunter. And then for your natural explorer, Maybe go with Urban Tracker if you don't have somebody who can lockpick. But as far as these Wasteland Wanderers, these will give you resistance to the whatever the Wanderer element it is. So we have Cold, Fire, and Poison. Fire and Cold are pretty common, so is Poison as well. I don't really think you can go wrong with any of them. Maybe Cold is the least element that is used. But I'm just going to stick with Fire and we can move on to level 7. Now at level 7, we get to pick up some Ranger spells. I would take Longstrider and Enhanced Leap, especially if you don't have a character that already can cast these two ritual spells. We do have Hunter's Mark already as a Vengeance Paladin. For our fighting style, we're taking defense. This is why I said when we were leveling Paladin there and we were picking a fighting style, don't take defense then, take it now. So let's move on to level 8 now. And at level 8 here, this is when I would say that the build is complete. We're going to have all of the essential pieces here. So for Ranger, level 3, you can pick whatever spell you want. I'm just going to take Ensnaring Strike. Subclass wise, we're going with Gloomstalker. This is going to make us a Dread Ambusher. It's going to give us a bonus to our initiative. So maybe you don't need 14 dexterity because now with Dread Ambusher here, we get that bonus. We're going to be pretty early in the turn order. We also get some extra movement speed at the start of our turn. And then we also get to do an extra attack that's going to have a 1d8 on top of it. So we're getting 3 strikes as an opener, which is very strong. We also pick up Superior Dark Vision, and then we also get the action Dread Ambusher Hide, which basically lets us use Stealth as a bonus action, and we get Umbral Shroud as well, which makes us invisible. We're going to play into this a little bit once we get to, I would say, the later game, Act 3, so like level 11, level 12. But right here, this is the bread and butter of the build. Let's move to a gameplay section and talk about basically how this build operates. Now, like I said, this build is completely online at level 8 here. For our equipment, just so you can see what we're using, this is, I would say, usual equipment for like a frontline character that you will have up until this point. We're going with the Circlet of Hunting because our concentration is Hunter's Mark. Cloak of Protection, we got the Flawed Helldusk Armor, the gloves as well, going with the Evasive Shoes. Weapon wise, we're using the Sword of Justice. You get this very early on in Act 1. Probably not even the best two-handed weapon you can get at this point, but it's going to work out just fine for us. I just like the sword in general. Bow of Awareness for that +1 for our initiative roll. So in total, we have +4 at this point. We should be very early in the turn order. For our ring, we're going with Ring of Protection. We can also take the risky ring, but we have Vow of Enmity here, so we don't need to take it for this fight in particular. And then for our amulet, I'm just going with the Harper's Amulet for that reaction ability for shield. But you can see here, our AC is at 22. And so now let's get into a little bit of trouble. As far as prep skills are concerned, I would always make sure you have Longstrider on you. Other than that, if you know you're going to get into a fight, like I know we are about to get into a fight, casting something like Enhanced Leap, this can save you from having to use some spell slots for Misty Step, just as far as mobility, because we can jump crazy distance. And then Vow of Enmity, this is also something good to cast preemptively, which again, we know we're going to get into a fight. Let's just go ahead and give ourselves advantage for 10 turns. And then the only other opener would be something like Hunter's Mark. So let's go ahead and do that. She's going to be very upset with us. We're going to go ahead and attack. Now, we have Dread Ambusher here, and you can see we have the melee variant. So we're getting +10 from Great Weapon Master. That's why we chose that as our first feat. We're also getting that 1d8 added on from Dread Ambusher here. Now, if we attack, and say this strike crits, that's going to add our Divine Smite on top of it. So this can be, this basically just delete anybody on the first turn here. I don't know if this will crit, maybe it will. We are taking Luck of the Far Realms, so we can actually guarantee that crit. I usually don't talk about Illithid powers, but this is one that I just always take. So we're going to crit here, and they're just gone. Damn, that's a lot of damage, and that was just one swing. Other than that, we can just keep hacking away. We can keep using Divine Smite, or we can save our spell slots and just wait till we crit to then activate Divine Smites, because our regular attack here, 17 to 30, that's not bad. Not bad at all. So give him a couple swings, and we crit again. Wow, we got really lucky. And then again, activated Divine Smite, absolutely destroyed them, killing a target for our second turn or getting that many crits. That's going to activate Great Weapon Master for our bonus action as well. So just a very solid frontline character here. Thankfully, Paladin and Ranger together, there is a lot of synergy and it's very powerful. But it also started to creep in my mind about how do we take this build to the next level for when you reach level 11, level 12, but we're keeping the foundation of this build. How do we make it stronger? And so I've got a little bit of surprise for you at the end, past the leveling section, where I create somewhat of an abomination of a class build. I'm not proud of it, but goddamn, it works. But anyways, let's get back to leveling. Now, back to leveling, I would switch back to Paladin. That way we get Aura of Protection. This is going to help out with our concentration. We can kind of zip by the levels here. So we're just going to stay with Paladin the whole way. At level 7 for Paladin here, level 10 overall, we get Relentless Avenger. This can be good, again, for our movement speed. That is something that is I would say a negative about this build in general, or just all melee characters. Again, movement speed is always just kind of a pain in the butt. But we're going to stay Paladin the rest of the way, because at level 9, we get Haste. That's just another really good concentration to have, that if we dip back into Ranger, we wouldn't have access to that. Feat-wise, we're just going to bump up our Strength, because we're not using any sort of elixir. And then for our last level here, we get Haste right here. As far as other preparation spells, I mean, again, these are prepared spells, so you can change these out at any time. But looking at the core of what we've done with this build, we have Dread Ambusher as an opener, and then just a lot of Divine Smites afterwards. We have something like Misty Step to move around, Hunter's Mark for a little bit of damage. Later at level 12 here, we get Haste as another concentration option. But I feel like we can take this to the next level where, again, some of the drawbacks with this build, movement speed, not always the greatest. We've kind of addressed that. I think we're fine on that front. But the other thing is the amount of spell slots that we have access to, which is a problem with Paladin because they're only like a half spellcaster, essentially. Same with Ranger. So that's a problem. But I think we can put together something that completely resolves that spell issue while not losing out on essentially anything that we've built here. In addition to that, I think we can make something a little bit stronger and pick up a cantrip like Booming Blade, which this build so far, if we just stay with Paladin and Ranger, we're going to be missing out on. Now I want to make something very clear before we get to this monstrosity. This combination here, as far as Ranger and Paladin, this is going to be completely viable in Tactician and Honor mode. So as far as a class fantasy, this is probably my favorite combination about putting my two, favorite classes together. I love this concept in general about this, almost like knight errant that would be going around in the wilderness and protecting borders and stuff. I love that fantasy. So let's keep that in mind, and now let's move on to something I've created, and I'm not exactly proud of it. I'm just kidding. I'm very proud of it. Let's take a look. All right, so what monstrosity have we created? Well, we went 2 Paladin for Divine Smite still, 4 Ranger. This is for a feat, but also that Dread Ambusher abilities. And then we went 6 Wizard, Blade Singing Wizard, because at level 6, we get extra attack. Now, Wizard is going to give us a lot of spell slots, as you can see down here, but also some really good spells. Like we're going to get Magic Missile as a range option. Maybe not use this one too much, but we get Shield as a reaction, so we don't have to rely on that amulet that we were using earlier. We still get Misty Step, we get Haste, and we get Counterspell. We could also turn this into a Shadow Blade build, but we're not going to talk about that. I went with Great Weapon Master because I want to use two-handed weapons with this. But from Ranger, or from Paladin here, really the only thing that we wanted was Divine Smites, so we still got those, and we get a lot of spell slots to work with. From Ranger, we still get Hunter's Mark as a concentration if we want to use that. Now, something we're going to be doing is very cheeky. We're going to be utilizing this Ring of Shadows, and this is going to give us Pass Without Trace. Now, take note. We can still do this without taking this ring. You would have to go 5 Ranger, 5 Wizard. We're not going to lose out on anything except like I think a spell slot, but we're going to be able to do this very cheeky maneuver. Also, quick tangent, we are in our Blade Singing stance, and you are not supposed to be able to use your Blade Song form if you're wearing medium armor. These Legacy of the Master Gloves, these are considered medium armor. So really this should be null, but it's not. But anyways, if you want to wear medium or heavy armor, I think that works just fine for this build because this build is not relying on the Blade Song form. We went with Wizard because of the spell slots and then the extra attack. But you can also see down there at the bottom for this cheeky maneuver, we need some assistance. So we're going to be using Shadowheart. And let's just see what we've cooked up. Now, Shadowheart, we need one thing and one thing only from you, and that is to cast Greater Invisibility. We'll have her do that. we are going to be casting that Pass Without Trace on us. That is going to give us a bonus to our stealth rolls, meaning we're going to be invisible while just hitting things with our very, very large sword. So we're going to end turn-based mode, and this poor guy here, we're just going to go ahead and smack him while he's sleeping. Bop. He wakes up, but guess what? He can't see us. So we can just continue to just smack him again with Booming Blade, and he's done. But there's another guard in the tunnel here, so we're going to get up close to him. I don't think we can... No, we can't actually run to him as far as our movement speed, but we can just Misty Step to him. Our stealth throw, you can kind of see what our modifier is as far as our stealth checks. You can see the difficulty's at 15. We're rolling at 26. Real big bump with that plus 10. That is from Pass Without Trace. That is why this combination is so powerful with greater invisibility and again, Pass Without Trace. Insanely good. This guy here, he doesn't know what's gonna hit him. And I kind of feel like this is funny. Kind of reminds me of like Quicksilver in the X-Men movies, where Quicksilver moves in really quick to a scene, and then it like goes back to normal time, and then you just see all these guys like fly around. Kind of what happens here. We run in there and boom, this guy's just all of a sudden dead. And again, we're not losing out on anything that we built into as far as the class fantasy. This is just more like the meta mindset, I would think, when it comes to a build like this. Again, you can do this without going into Wizard. I just thought, hey, let's take it to the next level. You could probably even take it even further with using something like a Shadow Blade instead. But man, that would be going off the rails even further. But anyways, all that is the build. That is the video. Hang on now. I didn't even notice that we were just using a longsword this entire time. I was planning on using either the Blackguard sword or the Sword of Chaos, but no, we just absolutely obliterated those guys with just a plain longsword. That's funny. Anyways, that is the build, guys. That is a video. Kind of went a little bit off the rails because initially it was just Paladin and Ranger, and I think we proved that that combination works just fine. But my brain was like, how do we take it to that next step? And that's why we introduced Wizard. You don't have to do that Pass Without Trace, greater invisibility combination. I just haven't shown that off in a while, and man, it's kind of funny. It's very, very busted, and that's one of the beautiful things about Baldur's Gate 3 is there's all these different combination things you can min-max. Introducing Shadow Blade, that would have been really good too, but we're not going that far off on a tangent. That is it for the video, guys. Let me know what two classes you like to put together that maybe don't have the most synergy, but just something that's fun. And I will see you guys in the next one. Peace and take care.